Welcome to Project-Based Python. These tutorials will not cover Python basics in depth. If you need help with the basics, you can try PyLearning Companion. It is a Python study app that covers all the core concepts in short lessons, then tests your skills with hundreds of activities. PyLearning Companion is available on Android and iOS. You can find the links in the video description. Today we will create a program that prompts the user to create a username and password. We will use functions, lists, and loops. The username will be checked against a list of other users to make sure that it is unique. Then we will check that the username has no numbers in it, and that it is between 8 and 14 characters long. We will then create a password that has at least one number, one capital letter, and one special character. We will then make sure that the password is 8 characters or longer. Let's get started. First, we need to create some variables that we're going to use in our program. Let's start with a list called users, and we will have 3 names in this list. So let's start with Sam and Frank, and let's say Jane. So when the user creates their username, they will not be able to use one of these 3 names. It will have to be something else. Then we're going to create a list of capital letters so that we can make sure that the password contains one of these letters. Now we could do this by saying caps and then creating a list, and in the list we can pass in each individual character. This would take some time, so there's actually a faster way to do this, but we need to import something from the Python library. So we're going to say import string, and now instead of passing each individual letter, we can simply say string dot ASCII, and we can choose between uppercase letters and lowercase. We only need the uppercase letters right now, so we will say string ASCII uppercase. Let's print the caps just so we can see what that looks like. So print caps. And down here we get every single letter of the alphabet, and they're all capitals. Now let's remove this print statement. We don't really need it anymore. And create a new list. We'll call this one numbers. And we'll create an empty list, then populate it with a for loop. So for I in range. And we'll pass in 10 here so that we can get numbers 0 through 9. Once we get these numbers, we want to add them to the numbers list and convert them to strings so that it is a little bit easier for us later. So we're going to say numbers dot append str, so we're converting the I from integer to a string. Now numbers is going to be a range of numbers from 0 to 9, and they will all be in string format. Let's print that out to see what it looks like. So print numbers and run it, and we get 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Let's remove this print statement now, and let's create 2 more variables that we're going to use. So the next one will be another list, and we'll call this one special characters, and I'll just abbreviate it. And we will use this list to make sure that the user password has one of these special characters. So let's add one more here. We can do $. And we need one more variable called name check. We'll set this one to false, and this name check will allow the user to proceed once the username is accepted. So we'll first get the username and make sure that everything is okay, and then we can move on to creating a password. Now we can start creating the functions that are going to perform the checks. And the first one will check whether or not the username is in this list. So we will call this one name available. We need to pass in the name, and then use an if statement to perform the check. So if name.title, and I'm using title to make sure that whatever the user enters, so for example, if the user enters John, it will turn it into capital J, and then the rest will be lowercase. The reason why I'm doing that is if, for example, we typed in Sam with a lowercase s, it would count as a different name from the one that we have in here. So I just want to make sure that we're not getting a duplicate. And so if name.title in users, return false. So that means that the name is not available. Otherwise, return true. Now let's make sure that our function actually works. So I will print name available and I will pass in Sam. So this one should be false because we have Sam in our list. Then I will print name available and I'll pass in a lowercase Sam. So that should also be false because here we're using name.title. Then I will print name available and let's go with Jeff. So this one is not in our list and it should return true because the name is available. Let's try that. So we have false for Sam, false for the second Sam, and we have true for Jeff. Now we can move on to our next function. So let me delete these print statements, get rid of this. And now we're going to check for numbers in the name. So the function will be called number found. We need to pass in the name. And we're going to use the list of numbers that we've created up here to loop through each individual character of the name and make sure that none of those characters match the numbers. So we will say, first we'll create a variable here called found and say false. We will then later return this variable, but first we need to perform the check. So for number in numbers, if name.find number is greater than -1. Now what this does, name.find and then whatever we're passing in here will take this character and look for it in the name. If the character is found, it returns a number that is the index value of that character. Now that index value can be anything from 0 to however long the name is, but if the character is not found, it will return -1. So here we're checking whether or not the return value here is larger than -1. If it is, it means it is found, otherwise it is not. So here we need to set found to equal true, and then we need to return found. So what this will do is it will loop through the name, make sure that there are no numbers in it, and if it does find a number, we'll return a true, so number is found. If it doesn't find the number, it will return false, so we will know that no numbers were found in the name. And let's try this out. So I can say print number found, and I will pass in a name, so I'll just say Jim. So this one should return false. And then I will do print number found, and let's say Jim 74. That one should return as true, meaning that there was a number found in the name. So if I run this, we get false for the first one because there are no numbers in the name. And then in the second one, we have true. So there is a number right here. It sets true, found to true, and we have a number in our name. Now we can create our while loop to prompt the user to enter a username and then perform some of these checks. So while true, we will get the username, input, and let's give a prompt of enter your username. Now we need to perform the first check, which is going to check whether or not the username is in the list. So we're going to use the name available function. So if name available, and now we need to pass in the username. So if the name is available, for now we will just pass. And the reason why I'm using pass is that the if statement will be invalid if there is nothing down here. So I'm just going to use pass and then handle the else statement first. So I will say else, and I will print please choose another username. All right, so that means that we've performed the check against the list up here, and if we find a double, we will tell the user to use another username. So let's try this. We can say Sam because we know that's in the list, and we get please choose another username. If I type in Jimmy, we get enter your username. So we're just going into the pass here, which we'll handle next. Let's stop this. And here we need to perform the next check. So if not number found, so we don't want to have a number in the name, we need to pass the username. And we'll use the pass again here and handle the else statement. And then we can just say print username cannot contain numbers. So now if we run this, we can try Sam, we get please choose another username. If I say Jimmy5, we get username cannot contain numbers, but if we just type in Jimmy, everything works. We just get into this pass statement. Now let's stop this and perform one last check for the username. So here we need to check the length of the username. So if 2 is smaller than len username, and that is smaller than 15, so this is making sure that 2 is smaller than whatever the length of the username is, and that the length of the username is smaller than 15. So that will give us a username that is between 3 and 14 characters long. Now we can say name check equals true, and this will allow the user to move on past this part. So we'll say name check equals true, and users.append username. So that will just add our username to that list, to the list up here. And we will also give the user a message just saying print username created. All right, so this should work now. If we run it, we can try, we have Jane that is in the list. So please choose another name. We can say Fred3. Username cannot contain numbers, but if we just use Fred, we get username created. Now we can move on to creating the password, but before we do that, we need to put this inside of an if statement. So if not name check, we need to perform these checks on the name. And then once name check is true, we can move on to the next part. So we'll say else, and let's get the password from the user. So password equals input, enter your password. Now we need to create a function for the first password check, and the first function will actually check whether or not the password has capital letters in it. So we need to create a function, and we'll call it caps found. We need to pass in the password, and this one will look similar to the numbers found. So found equals false for letter in caps. So we're taking each individual capital letter that we have in that list that we created. We will check if password dot find letter is greater than -1. Found will equal true, and then we need to return found. So these two look almost identical. Let's try using it. So here we will say if caps found and pass in the password. Let's just pass that for now, and create an else statement. And in the else statement, we will print password must contain a capital letter. Let's test that out. So enter your username, let's say Freddy, and then enter your password. So I have no capital letters. We get password must contain a capital letter. Let's have a capital letter and then a bunch of other letters, and we get inside of the if statement here, so we get to the pass. Now we can move on to the next check, and this one will require another function. So we will create one here, def special found and pass in the password. Found equals false. And then for character in special characters, if password.find character is greater than -1, we will set found to be true, and then we just need to return found. Okay, now we can use that down here. We are going to say if special found and pass in the password. Let's just say pass for now, handle the else statement, and in the else statement we'll say print password must contain a special character, and we'll just remind the user which special characters we're talking about. So we'll say exclamation mark, @ £, or $. All right, let's test it out. We can say Jimmy and enter your password. We will just use one without a capital letter. It says you must contain a capital letter, then let's have a capital letter. Then it says password must contain a special character, and let's have a correct one now. So W something 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 @ and there it is. Now we are here again. Now we will check that the password contains at least one number. So instead of pass here, we will say if number found. And remember, we're using the function that we've created up here. So we can just reuse this one, and instead of passing in the name, we're passing in the password. If this returns true, it means that there is a number in our password. So if number found, password, and again we will pass and handle it with an else statement. Here we'll print password must contain a number. So let's check this part. Ready. And let's just do E, some letters, a special character, but no number. And we get password must contain a number. So now let's do R, something, something, £, and a 2. And now we are back to the pass. We can now close this and perform the final check on the password. So now we need to make sure that the password is at least 8 characters long. So we are going to say if len password is greater than 7. So if it is 8 or more characters, pass for now. Let's handle the else. We will say print password must be at least 8 characters long. Let's try that. So Jimmy, and then let's have a capital letter, some other letters, special character, a number, but it is not 8 characters long. So we get password must be at least 8 characters long. Let's try it again. So K, something, 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 special character, and a number. It is more than 8 characters this time, and we get back to the pass. So let's close this again, and instead of the pass, we should give the user a final message. And in this final message, we can actually print out the username and the password that they have created. And then we also need to make sure that we break out of that loop that we created up here. So I will get rid of pass, and we'll use a formatted string. And we will say your username is, use the username here, and your password is, and type in the password. Now username is highlighted here, and if you hover over it, it will say username can be undefined. It will never be undefined in our code because we make sure that we have a username before we move on to the password. For this to not be highlighted, we could actually create the username outside of the while loop. So just set it to an empty string up here and then change it later, but we really don't need to do that. Then finally, let's just break out of the loop. And now let's create a valid username and password. So I will say Jimmy. For my password, I will say Q33 something something and then the letter D. So, oh, and a special character. And if I hit enter, we have your username is Jimmy and your password is whatever I just typed in. If you have enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to like and subscribe. Also check out PyLearning Companion. The link is in the video description. You can also find the source code below.